The Texas sun hammered the ground like a blacksmith's mallet as Colt Harlow dragged one more shovel of red dirt from the hole behind his cabin. 6 feet. That was the number that had lived in his head all morning. 6 feet of hard-packed earth to match the depth of his grief. At 42, he felt 50 years older and hollowed out besides. Fever had taken his wife and their 2 little ones 3 years back. Drought had finished off the stock. The bank kept circling like buzzards. This, he told himself, would be the last chore he ever did. He had even carved a rough cross and jammed it into the fresh pile. Here lies a man who quit. No name. Nobody left to say it out loud anyway. He lifted the blade for one more scoop when a shadow slid across the grave. Not one shape, 5. Thin silhouettes against the glare, small and still. Dresses torn and hair matted with dust. Girls. The oldest looked 14, the smallest maybe 6. Colt froze, the shovel paused midair. He hadn't seen a living soul in years this far out, only ghosts he tried not to follow. The nearest town was 15 miles of bad sand and no shade. The tallest girl stepped forward, voice steady though it shook at the edges. "Sir, we need help." Colt squinted through heat and dust. These weren't strays from a Sunday outing. Their clothes weren't just dirty, they were wrecked, ripped like they'd run through thorns and worse. Dried brown streaked the eldest sleeve. The littlest clutched a limp rag doll, with its head hanging by a thread. Something sharp and unwanted poked through the hard crust around Colt's heart. He slammed it down fast. "How'd you get out here?" he snapped, the words harsher than he meant. He needed them gone. He couldn't care. "Not today." "We walked," the tall girl said, the grit of 2 days in her voice. No water. No shade. That truth cut deep and woke a piece of Colt he thought the sun and sorrow had burned out, the part that used to keep people safe. He choked it back. He was supposed to be dead by sundown. "You can't stay," he told them, iron in his tone as he tightened his grip on the shovel. "This is private land, and I've got work." The girl's eyes tracked to the open pit, then came back to his with a directness that felt like cold water. "If we go back, they'll kill us." She didn't plead. She reported a fact. Kill them? They were children. But the terror there was real. Bruised arms, scraped palms, flinches they couldn't hide. They weren't lost. They were hunted. Who? The question slipped out before he could swallow it. "Men from the orphanage," the girl whispered. "They think we saw something we shouldn't." Colt's gut rolled. He'd heard the ugly talk, places where kids vanished, and money changed hands to make it tidy. The smallest, blue-eyed and bone-tired, started to cry, a thin sound that made the quiet ranch feel louder than gunfire. The eldest, she moved like a mother though she was a child, knelt and wrapped the younger ones, whispering soft to settle them. Colt looked past them and saw a growing smear of dust on the horizon, drawing a straight line for his gait. The tall girl went pale. "They found us," she breathed. The dirt cloud swelled and quickened. Every instinct told Colt to crawl into the hole he dug and let the world finish what it started. But in the leader's stare he caught a flash he knew from long ago, a stubborn spark that looked like his little Sarah's courage the day she'd climbed a fence taller than she was. He swallowed hard. The riders were close enough to count now. 4, moving with the cold patience of men who expect to win. Inside. "Now," Colt barked, swinging out of the grave. The tall girl grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "You don't understand," she said. "They have papers. If they catch us here, they'll drag us back and charge you with kidnapping." The word hit Colt like a hammer. This wasn't just fear and mercy. This was a snare. "Why come here?" Then he bit out. "Because you're the only one for miles who isn't owned by them," she said, voice cracking. "The sheriff, the mayor, the judge, Mr. Gideon Thorne pays them all." That name rotted everything it touched from 3 counties out. The riders topped the last rise. No dust-blind charge, just slow, mean confidence. Colt's mind snapped into lines. "Your name," he said. "June Whitaker," she answered. "These are my sisters, Maddie, Becca, Lila, and Rosie." She swallowed. "We're all that's left." The rawness of it squeezed Colt's chest harder than any memory had in years. The men reined in 20 feet off, badges glinting like promises nobody wanted. The leader, hat low, smiled without warmth. "Afternoon," he said, oily smooth. "Deputy Wade Crowley. Looking for 5 runaways." Colt kept his back turned, shoveled dirt into the hole like he had no ears. "Ain't seen anyone. Don't get visitors. Girls ages 6 to 14 from Thorne Children's Home," Crowley went on, eyes combing the yard. 2 days ago. Colt leaned on his shovel and finally faced him. "This is my spread, Deputy." Crowley's mouth twitched. "We've got a warrant to search any property within 50 miles. Those girls are dangerous." Colt almost laughed. The lie was that big. His hand drifted near the worn pistol on his hip. "Dangerous? How?" "They witnessed something," one of the men blurted before Crowley's glare shut him up. "Witness?" June's words echoed. "They saw murder." These weren't officers seeking truth. They were cleaners. "Look around," Colt said flatly. "Make it quick." The men swung down and split, checking troughs, wood piles, the barn. Colt set to filling the grave faster. Each scoop not just burying a hole, but burying the man who'd given up. One searcher circled back, shaking his head. Crowley's jaw tightened. "Big place for one man, Harlow," he said, menace leaking into his tone. "Gets mighty lonely." "I like lonely," Colt replied. "Most folks know to work with the law," Crowley went on, viper smooth. "Folks who don't sometimes face charges." The threat hung in the heat. Colt straightened, hand now resting plain on his sidearm. "Sounds like a threat." "Just facts," Crowley drawled. "Those girls stole property. Harbor M, you're an accessory." Another neat lie, short and sharp. The searchers returned empty. Crowley studied Colt, eyes sliding to the half-filled pit. "What were you burying?" "Old mare died of colic," Colt said without blinking. "Odd to plant a horse that close to your house. Odd to question a man on his own land." The air stretched thin. Crowley's fingers twitched near his gun, then stilled. Maybe he saw the dead calm in Colt's eyes. Maybe he didn't want to start a gunfight that drew attention. "We'll be back," he said at last, voice soft and poisoned. "They can't hide forever. And we remember who helped them." They wheeled their horses and rode off slow, leaving a grit haze and a promise of worse. Colt sprinted for the root cellar hatched behind the kitchen and lifted it. 5 faces blinked up in the dim. June's arms were a small fence around her sisters. "Are they gone?" she whispered. "For now," Colt said. "They'll return with more." June's shoulders sagged. "We should leave. We brought trouble to your door." Colt took in the wide eyes and cracked lips, the fear that kept their hands shaking. He pictured men calling kids dangerous to make it clean. "No," he said, voice solid in a way he hadn't heard from himself in years. "You're staying." He knew, as he said it, that nothing would be the same. Men like Crowley only stopped when you made them. The sky looked bright and empty, but somewhere far off, a low rumble rolled like a storm hunting for ground. Night dropped, and something strange happened in Colt's kitchen. Life. He cooked for more than one for the first time in 3 years. The girls sat, straight-backed at his little table, faces scrubbed but eyes shadowed like old folks. June kept scanning the windows with a coiled look, ready to run if she had to. Colt set down beans and skillet cornbread. "Tell me what you saw," he said gently. June shook her head fast. "The less you know, the safer you are." "I'm already in it," he said, calm but firm. "If they come, I need to know what I'm facing." Little Rosie peeked up, her voice a thin thread. "We heard Mr. Thorne and a lady." "Rosie, don't," June hissed, panic flaring. "But truth has a way of spilling from children." "She was screaming," Rosie whispered, and then she wasn't. The words hit like a fist. They hadn't seen cruelty. They'd seen a killing. "Where?" Colt asked, each syllable weighed. June stared at her plate. "Basement at the home. We were getting water. Rosie had a bad dream. We heard her asking about missing kids. Becca, 10 maybe, added with a tremble. She had papers. Said she'd tell everyone what Mr. Thorne was doing." A reporter, Colt realized. Or an inspector. Someone bold enough to pull the curtain. That made June and her sisters the last loose threads. "That's why they want us," June said, steel sliding back into her voice. "We're the only ones who saw." And if you vanish, Colt finished grimly, there's no witness. Silence pressed in. This wasn't a runaway tale. It was a death sentence. June cleared her throat. The lady, before she gave me this. From a tear in her dress, she pulled a small leather notebook. The cover was worn but clean, the pages tight. She said if something happened, someone had to tell the truth. Colt opened it and felt the room tilt. Careful script lined every page. Names, dates, payments. A map of Thorne's business written down where nobody could argue. Children traded like cattle. Some sent to mines to die fast, others to distant streets to vanish. The smallest marked special, and priced like bred horses. Lord, Colt breathed, hands shaking. She was sending it to the governor. June said, dull with shock. They killed her first. Colt snapped it shut, heat rising hot and ugly. This wasn't just murder. It was a system with roots in big offices. The journal could sink them, if it lived. Do they know she kept this? He asked. June nodded, fear back in her eyes. They tore her room apart. We ran. A new sound scoured the night, the heavy thrum of many hooves, fast. Colt went to the window and saw torches flicker like mean stars, far more than a search line. They brought an army, he muttered. June grabbed the girl's hands. We have to go. Too late, Colt said. The riders fanned out, sealing every exit like a net. The cellar again, June begged. They'll rip the place apart, Colt said. They know you're here. Mary's face crumpled, tears cutting clean lines through soot. Lila clutched her broken doll until her knuckles went white. Colt looked at the five of them, then at the journal that could end men like Thorne. That book had to outlive the night. A bullhorn of a voice boomed from outside, bouncing off the walls. Harlow. Send them out and we make this easy. Easy. The word tasted bad. Colt opened his gun cabinet with steady hands. Rifle. Old Colt. His pa's shotgun. What are you doing? June whispered, eyes wide. What I should have done 3 years ago, Colt said, snapping the cylinder shut. Standing up. You can't fight them all, she said, voice high with fear. Maybe not, he said, the ghost of a grin on his mouth. But they'll remember the night they tried. He pressed the journal into June's hands. Loose floorboard in the back bedroom. Hide it. If I fall, you get that to the Capitol, newspaper, federal marshal, somebody who can't be bought. Understand? Outside, the voice came closer and colder. 5 minutes, Harlow. Then we're coming in. Colt stared at the circle of torches, 12 men, maybe more. Odds that meant nothing and everything. He'd fought for uniforms and slogans once. Tonight, he fought for 5 kids with nobody else. Back room, he told them, low and even. No matter what you hear, don't come out till morning. June's hand snagged his sleeve. Why are you doing this? Colt saw his own children in a flash. Tiny hands, warm cheeks, and the empty shell he'd become when they were gone. Because some things, he said simply, are worth dying for. The 5 minutes ran out. A torch arced through the dark and slapped the roof, fire licking up the shingles like a living thing. Colt kicked the front window and fired, dropping a rider with the crack echoing hard. The answer was a storm of lead that chewed wood and glass and air. He rolled away as splinters hissed past where his head had been. The smoke thickened fast. The roof won't hold, he muttered, crawling to a second window, counting flashes and angles. Through the chaos, he heard Crowley's voice. Don't kill Harlow unless you gotta. We need him to sign. Frame the whole thing, nice and neat. Colt sent a round through a man trying to flank and earned a scream for it. The flames were running wild now, the heat punching through his shirt. From the back room, coughing. The plan clicked into his skull like a gear. They'd let fire do the killing, then collect what mattered and write the rest. June, he shouted. Back window, can you open it? Stuck, came the reply, ragged with smoke. Colt swore. Stepping out meant a hailstorm. Staying in meant burning. Unless he handed them something worse to look at. He snatched a kerosene lantern, smashed it on the front wall, and turned the yard into a glare so bright it stripped the gunmen of their shadows. 2 quick shots sent them diving for new cover. The price was time. The roof sagged, timbers screaming. They'll choke, June cried, coughing. Colt loaded the shotgun and did the thing you do when all choices end at the same place. He kicked the door and stumbled onto the porch. "Here I am," he roared into the blaze. "Come take me." The answer was a roar of shot and ball that shredded the rails and bit his shoulder, spinning him into a water trough that burst and soaked him in a rush that hissed against the burning boards. He rolled, came up, and doubled two men at the steps with the shotgun's thunder. Return fire drove him behind a lumber stack, bullets snapping splinters past his ear. Then the worst sound sliced the night, Rosie screaming from behind the house. "Not hurt, hunted. We got 'em," Crowley crowed. "All 5. Come out, Harlow, or we start cutting throats." Something inside Colt cracked clean. He'd failed. After everything, he'd failed. "You want me?" he roared back, the rage tearing his throat. "Let them go. I'll walk out unarmed." "No deal," Crowley snapped. "You both come. Surrender now, and maybe some of them see daylight." Maybe. The meanest word in the language. Colt checked what was left. 3 in the rifle. 4 in the Colt. Not enough to break 12 and reach 5 tied kids. But maybe enough to do the one thing that mattered if he couldn't save the book. He crawled through smoke toward the back room, not to give himself up, but to rip up that loose board and grab the proof. Heat beat at him in waves. The roof groaned like a dying bull. Heavy boots thudded on the porch. Bandanas. Guns up. They swept the rooms cautiously, not ready for what Colt had set. He jammed the journal into his vest, grabbed a lamp, and sprinted to the kitchen, where a small keg of blasting powder waited for clearing rock. He yanked the rag through the kerosene and dropped it. Fire ran like a snake along the powder line. 10 seconds. He dove through the back window as the kitchen turned to thunder, the blast blowing the rear wall open and flinging 2 men like rag dolls. 3 inside didn't come out. Colt hit the ground hard, the world ringing, and saw them. His 5 tied to a wagon 50 yards off, ringed by gunmen stunned but not stopped. He also saw a fresh tear in June's dress and a bruise blooming dark on her cheek. They'd touched her. Fury burned away the pain. Colt rose out of the smoke like a ghost and charged, rifle kicking twice. 1 man down by June, another spinning into the dust. The others scrambled. A shot burned across Colt's ribs. He dropped the shooter with the rifle, but grabbed the fallen pistol and kept moving. "Kill him," Crowley shrieked. But men who bully kids aren't the same men who stand their ground when someone fights back. Colt fought ugly and fast, using a captured man as a shield to punch a hole, hurling the body into Crowley as he rolled behind a barrel, reloading on muscle memory. The numbers flipped. 12 became 4, and those 4 shook at the knees. A cornered man is dangerous, though, and Crowley proved it by jamming his gun to June's temple. "Drop it," he yelled, "or the girl dies." Colt froze with the rifle half-raised. June's eyes locked on his, brave, bright, unbroken. Her mouth formed one clear word: run. Colt Harlow had been running for 3 years, from graves, from daylight, from himself. "You're right," he said softly, lowering the rifle. Crowley's grin spread, just as the little Derringer Colt kept in his boot bark twice and slammed him backward into the dirt. Guns flashed again, wild and mean, but everything shifted. The girls weren't only screaming now, they fought. June ripped a knot loose. Maddie and Becca kicked and clawed. Lila went for a wrist with her teeth. Rosie slammed her doll into a knee and howled. Colt scooped up Crowley's fallen gun, then saw a new smear of dust far out and growing fast. 24 riders, at least. Gideon Thorne himself was coming to finish what his men couldn't. Colt cut June's sisters free, chest heaving, blood running hot from fresh cuts. "Can you drive?" he asked. "Yes," June said through grit. "Wagon. North. There's a canyon and a cave 3 miles up. Hide there." "What about you, Uncle Colt?" Maddie asked, voice shaking. Colt looked from the dust to Crowley's corpse. "I'm buying you time." June grabbed his arm, fingers fierce. "You can't fight 20. "Don't need to," he said, pulling the journal from his vest and pressing it into her hands. "Just need to keep this alive. Get it to someone clean, newspaper, federal marshal. Don't stop." "They'll kill you," June whispered, tears starting at last. "Maybe," Colt said, a crooked smile slipping out. "They were gonna anyway. This way counts." The thunder grew loud enough to taste. The lead rider wore a city suit and the kind of horse money buys to brag. Thorne wanted his own hands on the ending. "Go," Colt said. "Now." June climbed up, jaw set. As the wagon rattled off toward the dark cut in the hills, a lightness Colt hadn't felt since laughter lived in his house rose in his chest. He had done one thing right. Thorne's line pulled up just outside easy rifle range. "Harlow," Thorne called, voice cold as coin. "I hear you're harboring criminals." "And I hear," Colt roared back, "you're murdering kids." Thorne's laugh was brittle. Those weren't children. They were witnesses to a tragic accident. "Falling downstairs is an accident," Colt spat. "Being pushed ain't." "Accidents happen," Thorne purred. "Like the one about to happen to you." His men spread in a wide, trained arc, not Crowley's sloppy crew, but hired killers who knew their work. Colt took the first flank with a crack, shifted, and cut a rider angling behind the ruins. He kept moving, never where he'd been when the bullets arrived. $20 for his head. Thorne shrieked, calm cracking. Greed made his men sloppy. Colt used it, shooting the hungriest and letting suspicion chew the rest. Orders snapped back under threats, and new torches flared as they lit the barn, the coop, the feed shed, circling him, with fire to flush him. Then, faint, hopeful, gunfire from a canyon. The girls. Colt moved toward the sound. Thorne saw and screamed, "There! Kill him!" A dozen guns boomed, and Colt did what no sane man would. He ran toward the canyon through a grind of lead, body weaving from rock to cactus to old fence post, every inch of earth he'd memorized saving him. "Don't let him reach the canyon." Thorne howled. "He's got something. We need the book." They'd seen June take it. The girls weren't facing a few stragglers. They'd been ambushed. A round tore his thigh. He didn't break stride. The canyon guns grew louder, sharp, steady shots with a girl's voice cutting commands. June, rallying her sisters, braver than most men. Colt crested the ridge and saw the trap. Wagon on its side, a wheel still spinning. 6 professionals closing in. Torches lighting brush. Emma, June, knelt behind the wreck with a scavenged rifle, careful as a sniper. The younger 3 crouched behind a rock, trying to make themselves smaller than fear. Colt's first shot dropped the closest. His second spoiled another's aim. The rest swung toward him, and bullets rained from behind as Thorne's main force crested the rim. Crossfire. No math on earth gave him a chance. He rolled behind a deadfall, counted breaths, and got another canyon man with a shot that would have pleased an old sergeant. Return fire chewed his cover to splinters. Then his heart stopped, Rosie, breaking for him with her doll, feet kicking dust as a rifle tracked her. "Uncle Colt," she cried, the name landing like a brand. Colt didn't think. He threw himself out of cover and took the bullet meant for her in his chest, scooping her and rolling behind a boulder. Air fled his lungs. Blood wet his shirt. Rosie's little sobs shook against him. "It's okay," he whispered, voice thin. "Uncle Colt's got you." June's last round snapped. The men pressed in. More poured over the rim. Then, clear as church bells, bugles from the east. Cavalry. A full patrol by the sound. Thorne had made the one mistake proud men make. He'd made his crimes so loud the army could hear. They were minutes out. The girls didn't have minutes. Rosie bled from a graze where he hadn't been fast enough. The journal lay under June's coat. Colt had 1 rifle shot left. On the rim, Thorne stepped out, pistol leveled, eyes full of hate. Colt aimed, hands shaking from loss and pain, and Rosie whispered, "Are we going to be okay?" He realized it wasn't about revenge. It was about a child needing yes. He swung from Thorne to a slab of loose rock above the gunman and fired. The slide came small but mean, dropping 2 and scattering the rest. Cavalry's close. June shouted, scrambling to Colt. Thorne screamed, "Kill them all. Leave no witnesses." But men who smell federal blue lose their nerve. Most melted into night. Only Thorne and 3 loyal devils held. Bluecoats poured down the trail with sabers flashing. U.S. Army. Captain Daniel Briggs roared, "Drop your weapons." Thorne grabbed a fallen rifle and aimed at June. Colt's last weapon, the little boot gun, barked once more. Thorne's shot went wide. Colt's didn't. The rich man spun and hit the dust. The three survivors dropped their guns and threw up their hands. A medic knelt by Colt, wrapping his chest and shoulder with quick, careful hands. Rosie, streaked with soot and tears, climbed into Colt's lap with her doll. "Uncle Colt," she asked, small and serious, "are you going to die?" Colt looked at this brave child, then at June, then at the others who would never have to be afraid of the dark the same way again. "No, little one," he rasped, warmth pushing through pain. "Not today." And he meant it all the way down. 6 months later, the yard outside Colt Harlow's rebuilt cabin held the sound he once thought gone forever, laughter. The Thorne Children's Home was a bad memory left to dust and locked doors. Judges and bagmen were either in cells or running from their own shadows. The leather notebook had done its work, each line dragging one more name into daylight until the whole rotten web came down. June, now 15, ran the small kingdom like a steady captain. She and Becca and Maddie walked to the new schoolhouse in town, coming home with chalk on their fingers and stories on their tongues. Lila learned to smile without looking over her shoulder first. Rosie still called him Uncle Colt and slipped her hand into his without asking. Her rag doll no longer dangled by threads. June had stitched it neat and strong, tight seams that would never give way again, like a family rebuilt from broken pieces. The man who had once dug a grave for himself had, without meaning to, dug a foundation. He had found work worth waking up for: protection, provision, patience. He patched fences, taught chores, burned beans twice, learning to cook for 5, and learned to sleep with the peace that comes from hearing small feet pad to the kitchen at dawn. Some folks are born into big deeds. Others get pushed toward them. A few stumble into their purpose when they plant both boots between harm and innocence and refuse to move. Colt Harlow had been that last kind. 5 girls had appeared on the worst day of his life and handed him a reason to live that didn't need fine words. As the sun slid down and set the hills on fire, Colt leaned on the doorframe and watched his girls race the wind, the evening light painting them gold. He understood, finally, what it meant to be alive, not the absence of pain, but the presence of duty chosen freely and love that sticks. He tipped his hat toward the quiet place under the mesquite where he'd laid his family years ago, and toward a second small marker where he'd buried who he used to be, the man who gave up. Then he turned back to the table inside where supper waited and little hands would reach, trusting he'd be there to pass the bread.